This is my third try trying to record this video, and kind of a little bit about my thought process or kind of how I work through things. I love journaling, and I had this thought, this idea. I journaled it out about 4 pages, and I closed the book and I tried to just do this podcast, but it's not coming out the way that I wrote it, the way that I intended it to. So then I start it. The first couple lines don't work out. I restart it and it doesn't work. So I'm gonna have my book out here, but I'm just gonna always speak to you candidly. I value every interaction, every relationship that I've had, and I bring that up because this week I'm on spring break with my son. Well, actually, my daughter, who's in kindergarten, she's on spring break. My wife and her are out in San Diego, and me and my son are here at home. And we spent about 3 days so far. We've got another 2 days together. But just through our time together, and he's 21 months old now, it's not something that's new to me, but we have our moments where we have our together time, where we get to play and we eat. We may watch a little Bluey, a movie or something, just kind of playing pretend, whatever that is, going for walks. Then we have other times where we have our alone time, where he's kind of self-exploring, self-playing, while I, clean, reorganize, while I make some dinner, while I'm trying to read, just doing something. But what I've learned about myself, and it's not just through this week, but just kind of over the course of time, when I start something, when I want to do something, but I get interrupted, I get very frustrated. And in the beginning, I used to sense this level of frustration with the person that was interrupting my task, the thing that was at hand. Or maybe it's a situation that, interrupted my chain of events, the things that I'm supposed to do. And I'd get very frustrated at, the person or the situation. But what I've learned is, with all relationships, all interactions, all situations, it's a great learning tool for us to grow. And the way that I would look at it is they're all mirrors for us. I'll break this down in the sense of patience. Patience with my son, patience with my daughter, in the way that when they don't do the things that I want them to do within a certain period of time, perhaps it's getting ready for school, getting ready to eat, going through bath time, getting dressed, finishing up certain things within a certain time, because sometimes there's a schedule that we have to follow. Other times we just kind of want to move on to the next thing. Or they're taking longer than I would expect them to. Notice how not only is it what they're doing, but it's my expectation about how things are supposed to go. That's where my sense of frustration arises. And with the patience with my son, for example, it's like even just the things of him when we go for a walk. I just want this quick walk with my dog. We're going down 2 blocks, we come back around, but he's just kind of taking his time, and he sits on the ground and he's crawling, and it's cute for a little bit. You want to cultivate the sense of patience and allowing the kid to explore. But other times, it's just taking too long for him to explore this patch of grass or to follow this bug around, or he just wants to kind of sit and look around. But I don't want to sit and look around in front of someone else's house. I just want to finish this walk and go home, and maybe we can do something else that's more fun, that I think would be more fun. But the kid doesn't want to, right? The kid just wants to be where he's at, doing what he wants to do. The same thing when it comes to reading and it's story time. As a parent, you want to be involved in story time. You want to read a book with them, read many books with them perhaps. But when the kid wants to read the same book over and over, and maybe not even read the whole book, just read up to a certain point, close the book, start over again. And it's like, can we just finish the book? Can we read something else? Can we just stop story time altogether? But this is what the kid wants to do. It's my expectation of how the kid is supposed to be, how the experience is supposed to go. That, again, creates that frustration for me. And same thing when I want to do my own things, when I want to set time aside to draw, I perhaps have a 30-minute window and I want to draw, but my kids wake up or something else happens and I can't really finish the task. It's like I plan for this time, or even when it's working out and I have to come back in, cut my workout short. It could be a number of things, whatever that thing is for you. If you're doing something and it gets interrupted, something doesn't go out the way that you've planned. This is where frustration is never with the other person. It's really never with the situation, right? Even if there's no other people involved, it's, you curbed, your wheel, as you're trying to park, or you get caught in a rain, thunderstorm as, you just finished your car wash, or your food order doesn't come out right, or it takes too long. A number of things. It's always a reflection back on us. And we can set an expectation for how things are supposed to go. We can kind of plan our day. We can give extra time for it. We can let the other people involved, again, when we're with kids, you have to kind of set an expectation. We're going to do this, and then we do that. Here's the time that we have for it. Then we can move on to the next thing. We can set the expectation all that we want. But did we really expect things to go the way that we want to? Like, did we really feel that we had that level of self-control over other people, over the situation, over the places that we've been, over just anything that we're doing? Because really, we don't have control over anything outside of ourselves, outside of our mind. And even sometimes our bodies and our minds won't act the way that we want them to go. So I use this frustration, or at least my reflection on frustration, through different places. So it's like when I'm working with other people, all different places that I've worked with, all different kinds of jobs. And it's learning how to set parameters or boundaries with other people so that you can minimize that frustration. Because really, like, whenever someone else doesn't meet your expectation, whenever someone crosses a boundary, we don't have to take it so personally. That's what used to happen to me before. I get really frustrated, and it would be personal, and it would be directed at that individual, perhaps for feeling violated, or perhaps feeling like they didn't do what they were supposed to, or they weren't doing their part and it left you to do more than you needed to do. Or perhaps they placed a lot of blame on you. And it doesn't have to be personal. That frustration, what had happened or what is happening, can just be another turn of events. An example that I had is like working with people who know the standards, who knows what needs to be done, but they still don't do it. And that to me is a form of like self-sabotage. And I can relate to that because I've noticed that in my own patterns before. So when you have gone through something before, you can kind of see the same thing in other people. And what I've learned to do when working with people is, first of all, number one, getting to understand them. Having the dialogue to understand what's going on. Here's what I feel is wrong. What do you feel like is the situation? How do you feel it could be done better? And just getting them to just kind of really open up and getting to that level of understanding. When we get to that level of understanding, then it's trying to work with them to guide them out of that self-sabotage, because they know what needs to be done. They know what the standard is, but they don't do it, and they recognize that within themselves. So what I think is important is setting I don't want to say boundary yet, but helping them set a daily or weekly baseline, setting a guideline or path or parameter for them so that they can operate better. Because that is what they want to do, right? And typically the people that I work with, or I have worked with, they want to get better. So, okay, what does it look like, and this is me asking them the question, when you're successful, when you're doing the things that you're supposed to do and the outcomes are the way that you want them to? What does it look like as a failure when you're not doing the things that you want to do? And where in between those two places are there chances for redemption? So for example, if you're working with someone and let's say like within the tattoo, field, social media is pretty important, right? Like you need to post a certain amount of times to be able to get a certain kind of engagement, to get a certain reach, to get new clients. And when someone knows what they're supposed to do, they're supposed to post a certain amount of times per week, but they don't do it, and then they're complaining that they don't have clients or no one's reaching out to them. You have one clear and obvious free tool that you can use to reach people, but you don't do it. That becomes a problem for you and for everyone else around you. If that person has to complain about their situation and there's a clear path to get there, we have to understand what that looks like. So when having a conversation with this person I've worked with before, they've said, well, I know you expressed that you should post every single day, but I don't want to post every day. And I said, okay, like how many times a week do you want to post? And it's like every other day. I said, okay, there's 7 days in a week. Pick a number, 3 or 4 times a week. And they say 3 times a week. I said, okay, we can post 3 times a week. What does it look like when you're posting 3 times a week? Like what is the best case scenario that you would like to have happen? And it's, well, hopefully I can post, I get more engagement, I get people that like my work, they see what I want to do, I get to share more of it, I get more inquiries, I get more bookings. Essentially, you get to do more tattoos, make more money, get more content to post. And it's like, great. You understand the success of what it is that you're going to do. There's a reason, there's a purpose to it. And it's also helping them get to a place of like, okay, if you're having trouble posting 3 times a week, let's come up with some ideas. Maybe one day is you're posting your design. Another day you're posting a video or a clip of you in progress. Maybe another day it's posting the finished video or the finished tattoo. Nothing crazy, you don't have to do anything extra, but it's along the lines of what you're doing already. That's almost at the bare minimum, but you're helping them set a path, a guide, a parameter towards how do we make this as easy as possible for you to be successful. And what does it look like in failure, right? If you're posting 3 times a week and it's not working, if it's failing, what does that look like? Well, no one engages in my content, no one's sending me any DMs, no one's posting. Well, what do you do in that case? You would have to start to change up how you post. Maybe it's the photo qualities, maybe it's what you're posting, maybe it's the captions, finding some way to make it more engaging and just look at it as a creative activity. But ultimately, if you don't post 3 times a day, you don't give yourself a chance to get that reach. You don't give yourself a chance to share what you're excited about in this life that you're living, then you won't get new clients. So ultimately, when you don't do those things that's going to allow you to be successful in your craft, this thing that you say you're passionate about, you're failing yourself. Is that what you want? And it's like, no. Okay. So these are things that you're expressing, things that you want to do, things that you understand why you should do it, what it looks like to be successful, what happens when you don't do it, or when you do it and it's failing. What are the chances for redemption, right? And again, the chances of redemption are like, maybe it's posting more frequently, maybe it's changing your content strategy. But also it's like, okay, well, if you don't post 3 times a week, don't consider that a complete failure. You probably just fell off for the week. You had a hard time. You can try again next week. But how many chances of redemption do you get? This is now setting that boundary. Because if I have to work with you, if you have to work with somebody that is not doing what they're supposed to, or they say they're going to do something and they don't do it, now that energy, that problem gets transferred over to you. In this case, it gets transferred over to me as the business owner, as the lead artist, as the person that other people are working with. That, okay, now you've been doing this for a very long time, self-sabotaging. You know what you're supposed to do. I know what I want and what I don't want in my life, and I want people who are driven. I want people who are excited. I want people who follow through and do what they're supposed to, who follow through and do what they say. So if you don't do those things, we're going to make it very clear on what it means to work together. And I've done this several times before in different ways, but in this particular case, this scenario is at the very minimum, it's posting 3 times a week. And if you miss posting 3 times a week for that week, and we'll make it very clear that a week is from Saturday to Sunday, you've missed 1 week of posting, right? You missed your 3 times per week. You miss 3 weeks like that, you no longer work here. And that to me is helping someone get a very clear path out of their own way, out of self-sabotage. And it's no longer difficult for me to do that because I've spent enough time feeling frustrated, feeling bad. And I'm like, okay, like it's clearly not me anymore, right? I'm going to not take it personal, but I'm going to also personally look at this and how can I help contribute my energy to help this person get over this hump. And what I like to do is be very clear in the outcome of the success and failure, but also not only just have this discussion or tell them what they're supposed to do, all of these things, it's having the other person lead the conversation. Talking about where they've fallen short, what they should be doing, getting them to define the parameters. And this now becomes personal accountability, and also it's a group accountability, right? And that you want them to succeed, you want them to thrive in the same way, maybe not the same way, and hopefully the way that they would want to also. Like they just know it. Like we can apply this even to like people who need to eat better and people who need to work out. It's like, I know I should be. So, okay, so if you're not clear on what it means to eat healthy, and you don't have to go cold turkey and just, eat salads every day, and that may not be healthy for you. You don't need to just eat chicken and rice. Like you can just start by omitting the junk food. You can probably start by cutting your sodas from 5 times a week to 4 times a week. You just find, either with you as the individual, or if you're helping someone get to their path, as long as they know it and they want it, you can begin to have this productive conversation. You can't really want something more than the other person. What I can want is a healthy work environment or a personal environment for me with boundaries. And also I want to live a life that I don't have to constantly be frustrated around another person. So when this person doesn't meet their boundary, when they don't meet their parameters, when they're not doing what they're supposed to, and there's a clear mark of like failure, then there's no more frustration. Like I've severed relationships in previous jobs with people where there's no harm, no foul. In the sense of like, damn, Andy, like you've tried. I've worked retail, even in work operating a tattoo shop, for just people who are late. Like my personal belief is like, you should be early for the day, right? Like if a client's going to be here at 10:30, I want to be there by at least 9:30. I'd like to be there a little bit earlier because I want to anticipate if there's traffic, if there's a delay, if there's something that's going on. But then there are some people who just always make it just barely on time, or they're just always a few minutes late. And it's like, show up on time, right? It's not only respect for the client and the space, but it's respect for you. Like you're giving yourself the proper amount of time to get ready for the day. You don't have to begin your day feeling rushed or feeling anxious. So whenever I've let people go through multiple write-ups at my previous jobs, and I've had to like fire someone, let them go from it, they weren't upset at me. There was more like they were upset at themselves for knowing that there was someone that cared and guided them and they let themselves down. And I feel disappointed more so than frustrated, because I'm just like, you had potential. I see potential in every person. But you know that people are going through their own things. They're not at the level that you'd like them to be. They know there's a level that they want to be. So you're just helping them guide to get them on those small steps. And sometimes that first small step is just showing up for yourself. It's showing up on time, doing the things that you're supposed to do. And again, I know that because I've worked previous jobs where I had to like fight to make my way on time. And then you just kind of learn like, all right, I need to set 2 alarms. The first alarm, is like, all right, you better wake up. Second alarm is no bullshit, loud alarm, like get up and get out of bed. Maybe your alarm is across the room. So whenever I've let somebody go or I've set a clear boundary, and this happens personally too, right? In personal relationships, how could I have set better expectations or guidelines or have done better, right? How do I do and live and be better for the next person that's going to enter my life? It's the people that I work with, the people that I live with. And I can see in all of these relationships, whether it's personal, professional, what kind of person I was at that time, what kind of person I am now. And I can have an idea of like what kind of person that I want to be. So think about that in terms of like, I feel like most people, not everyone is a business owner. Not everyone has really worked or managed other people. So let's even think about this in terms of like getting into a relationship with another person. Could be a friend, could be a intimate partner. And if you've been in a relationship that it hasn't worked out before, right? Maybe you no longer talk to a particular person. You think about that in the sense of like, when that person entered your life, what kind of person were you? What were you looking for within that relationship? What were you willing to tolerate? What were you willing to deal with? What did you not know? What did you know? What do you realize now? Right? Knowing that through this time, you've learned some things about yourself or the other person, what you will and won't tolerate, who you are now, that if this is who you are now, would you have let that same person then into your life, knowing what you do now? Were there other things that you could have done to perhaps get a better feel for that certain relationship? Or did it require time, certain experience to have happened? Because there's always a level of maturity and growth that happens for everyone at every phase of their life. And knowing who you are now, if you've learned a lesson from working with that person, having that interaction, that engagement, personally or professionally, then you can see within that person, okay, now I'm this way. I'm not willing to take on another person who has this personality trait. I'm not willing to give up a certain amount of time or energy for someone who can't reciprocate. I need to reciprocate time or energy to the next person that comes into my life, because perhaps maybe the last relationship that didn't work out, it was on you as well. And then you think about like the ways that you can be in the future, right? Like, damn, I know that I messed this up, or I know that I didn't see this within another person. I know that I didn't catch these patterns yet. There's some things that I have to spend more time, perhaps. You might have to date somebody a little bit longer before you decide to, move in with them or get married, whatever the case is. And it's the same with hiring, right? For me, the same people that I've hired or worked with before, I may not necessarily hire or work with them now. And it's not that they weren't the right person for the position or they were a bad person, but that's just who I was at the time, hiring or looking to work with somebody at that time, with the experiences that I've had looking for an individual. But as you begin to learn about personality types and traits, and you've had certain experiences operating a business or being in a relationship, you can now see through certain language, certain intentions, certain work ethics, certain patterns that you say, you know what, if I catch that pattern earlier, maybe it's spending more time involved in the hiring process, I can perhaps mitigate some of these things. Or it's perhaps having a probation period so that you can monitor and watch some of these things. Because your time and your energy is very valuable, right? When you have to spend your time every day working with somebody, if you have the ability to control your environment, you'd want to learn how to prevent an individual who's perhaps not the right fit for you at that time to come into your space. The same with personal relationships. As you grow and change, perhaps different from another family member or a friend, the dynamics change. And other people aren't bad people, right? If you've learned something about them later on, if you've had a certain interaction with them, that's just the best of who they were or are at this time with their experience. And it's the same exact thing with you. Who you are in any particular given time, that's just the best of who you were. The decisions that you've made, the relationships that you've had, the experiences that you've had, it's all led you up to now. And we understand that intentionally, no one wants to do bad. No one is intentionally a bad person. There may be bad choices, right? And even if someone makes repeated bad choices and someone has told them or they recognize it, that's just what they're capable of at that time. And you think about people who just grow up. I grew up in Flatbush, and you just people are just constantly getting into trouble. And they know there's a conscious decision about them that they shouldn't rob, they shouldn't steal, they shouldn't kill, but they're just in this environment. That's just their survival mechanism. That's just all that they know. They don't see another opportunity for them. For some others, it may be really obvious, but for some, they just may be locked into this particular way of thinking. That perhaps they need to continuously have these experiences, because some experiences and lessons need to be repeated over and over until perhaps they hit rock bottom, right? You think about somebody who's constantly drinking to excess, getting DUIs, getting into trouble, showing up late for work, behaving erratically or a certain way. People who know they want to quit smoking and, they just can't find it within them, but they just succumb to this weakness and they still go and do it again. But they need to experience it and wake up with another hangover and just go, fuck, not again. Or just whatever the thing is for you or for them. Until we get to a point where we realize enough is enough. That I don't want this anymore. That I really want to change. And you're giving all of your time and energy to change the situation. So I started to have less expectations of other people and the situation around me. I started to have less frustration with other people and the situations that I'm in. And it's really understanding ourselves more so that we can see how we're triggered by other people and events. It's spending the time to understand another person and setting a boundary, having parameters so that you can have a very clear line on how much or how little or not at all to interact with an individual, or what kind of situations you don't want to put yourselves in. And we meditate on this, knowing that others want to do and be better, but perhaps like my son, who is 21 months, and he's unable to communicate, or he's overtired, or he just gets physically expressive, that if I feel like I'm getting frustrated with him, that's the best that he's able to do. That I can't change him more than I expect him to. That really I should be the one turning all of my energy and attention inwards to understand myself, that I'm triggered by an individual, a small child that can't control himself, that as a grown adult, I should be able to control myself in this situation. That regardless of what happens outside in the world, to get frustrated at an external event is beyond my control. Actually, it's within my control, and getting frustrated at an external event is just silly. Like it's something that being frustrated doesn't even help. But it's always spending the time and energy cultivating what's going on up here in our thoughts, and how do we respond in a better way. And even if you feel like you haven't responded in the best way, even if you feel like you're still getting frustrated, you don't know how to set the boundaries, you continue to have these patterns reappear in your life of frustration, or it's with people or things, taking the time to just work through that and just learn, how can I be better and do differently next time? So what we do is we let it go, we let it be, we learn, and then we see. In reality, everyone is just a mirror for me.